Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alex Surette. I'm in the Malamut Support Needs program at the College of Education on Teachers Credentials in Dr. Anthony Palmer's class. I'm here to talk to you about the interview of Ms. Alvarez regarding SLD, Specific Learning Disabilities. Our introduction, please note, this was a simulated interview, not one with the direct teacher. The teacher in this interview is Ms. Jennifer Alvarez, who teaches sophomore year students with disabilities at River Valley High School. According to Ms. Alvarez's simulated interview, the student that we are discussing is Jake, a sophomore at River Valley with a specific learning disability, or an SLD, challenged in lessons on literary interpretation. What is a specific learning disability? According to the Colorado Department of Education, this is a condition within a singular or multiple intellectual actions featured when interpreting and applying linguistics. Verbal or composed can generate within challenges paying attention, surmising, talking, perusing, drafting, writing words, and executing on arithmetic matters such as scenarios like sensory struggles, cognitive impairment, slight neurological delays, visual processing disorders, and expanding language disorders. Types of specific learning disorders, or SLDs. There are several types of specific learning disorders, including dyscalculia, learning disabilities, dyslexia, dysgraphia, decision-making, implementation, and evaluation process using assistive technology. According to the simulated interview of Ms. Alvarez, the struggles Jake demonstrated within interpreting literary material appeared within all academic courses, especially among deep literary activities. Ms. Alvarez mentioned that supportive telecommunication device inquiries were part of Jake's IEP rendezvous, with conversation between Ms. Alvarez, the literary instructor, the campus therapist, and Jake's legal guardians, choosing an opportunity to test materials for enhancing literary understanding and drafting precision. Part 2 of AT Decision Making, Implementation, and Evaluation. According to Ms. Alvarez, the materials tested and observed were Read and Write for Google Chrome and Ginger software. Read and Write, according to TextHelp, enhances availability which pupils have for acquiring reading assistance while completing assignments on various applications. And according to Ginger software, they wrote that they recommend optional terms when explaining what a pupil means and is essential when compressing lengthy expressions. The Google Read and Write, how it works. This is what the Google Read and Write command will appear as when on a screen, when applied. And here's an example of what Ginger software can do for students using AT devices. Within the image, you see that it offers options for rephrasing sentences for students. Documentation of AT within IEPs. According to Ms. Alvarez, Read and Write and Ginger were observed and tracked throughout. Ms. Alvarez mentioned regarding Read and Write, there were reachable benchmarks placed like turnarounds within literary interpretation, having a 1/5 improvement during the academic term measured with literary interpretation assessments and literature work. Ms. Alvarez mentioned that within Ginger software, the focus was on turning around Jake's drafting precision and designing benchmarks such as improved structuring when answering inquiries using a grading scale. Ms. Alvarez stated that gauging would occur every 30 days to see if the materials are enabling Jake to reach his benchmarks, and reobservation will occur at conclusions of grading periods for amendments to devices or modifications if warranted. Here are some examples of documentation of assistive technology within IEPs. As it mentions, there is a goal area, such as writing, expresses the strengths and concerns and necessities, and the impact of the student's disability on involvement and progress. There is a section for supplementary aids and services, such as the accommodation and areas and locations where the support devices are warranted, and a description of the supplementary aids and services, which includes the assistive technology needed and its locations, and the indirect services section, which decides if these supports are warranted for campus personnel to phase in this IEP. AT support. Ms. Alvarez mentioned that her educational jurisdiction furnishes routine directions regarding supportive telecommunications, but her campus lacked an expert on it, so scouting and phasing in became her job and the literary instructors. Ms. Alvarez said that regarding career enhancement, she went to school courses, even though the classes got seen as widespread. Ms. Alvarez mentioned that deeper advice could get discovered through ATIA and UDL by CAS, assisting Ms. Alvarez with using supportive telecommunications productively with secondary pupils, even though specified instruction was better when considering Jake's SLD concerns. Ms. Alvarez discussed that she would lobby for enhanced instruction for supportive telecommunications for secondary because they encounter stricter expectations. Evaluating effectiveness of the AT. Ms. Alvarez mentioned that productivity was assessed through information that was numeric and subjective, and grading scales got designed for accounting on Jake's literary interpretation and composition clearness pre- and post-implementation. Ms. Alvarez mentioned that within the read and write application, literary interpretation assessments and grading scales were applied, and within Ginger software, composition clearness and structuring among a grading scale for drafting got applied. Ms. Alvarez also sought opinions from Jake regarding his comfort levels operating the applications and if he felt an impact when interpreting deep literary material, and that the comments expressed were essential because it influenced the way materials were applied. Part 2 of evaluating effectiveness. Ms. Alvarez mentioned that she discovered Jake warranted extra assistance using read and write as he encountered extensive readings, and the IEP crew emphasized that through furnishing extra guidance lessons for understanding literature through these materials. Also, Ms. Alvarez stated that thorough examination was occurring, and when test runs concluded, Jake's performance continued to get observation, assisting the crew of warranting modification if needed. Ms. Alvarez mentioned that his performance got checked every 30 days, with amendments possible depending on facts coming from efforts in assessment and compositions. Ms. Alvarez concluded by stating that when evaluating interpretations and composition efforts, the crew may find how the materials affected results. The QIAT section, consideration of AT needs. I learned that according to Ms. Alvarez, the proficiencies in this section were using supportive telecommunication materials and assistance, which got recommended for every pupil needing support. Team judgment deciding template applied within the IEP crew. The fact that supportive telecommunication judgments were influenced through IEP benchmarks and lesson availability. Proficiency within the IEP crew acquired data about the pupils' atmospheres and assignments, and that a variety of supportive telecommunications were scouted out, and supportive telecommunication directions were listed within the IEP. The one section with challenges, according to Ms. Alvarez, was that the IEP crew struggling to possess the understanding warranted regarding judgments on supportive telecommunications, and it was a challenge because the campus site was lacking an expert on these materials on who was present for the crew to contact. Assessment of AT needs. According to Ms. Alvarez, she mentioned that 5 of the 7 parts of the section were proficient. These sections regarded effective testing being administered within an appropriate atmosphere, supportive telecommunication testing with test runs finished among appropriate deadlines, supportive telecommunication testing considerations influenced by information, direct considerations regarding IEP judgments furnished via supporting telecommunication assessments, and reevaluation of warranted support technology if differences appeared. Ms. Alvarez mentioned that 2 of the 7 parts noted challenges. The challenges were that the directions regarding supportive telecommunication examination specifically explained and not explained with detail and dependent on educator design grading. The next challenge she mentioned was that testing was not being proctored through an experienced crew, caused mainly due to a campus expert on supportive telecommunications not being present and impacting testing templates, even though team effort in the crew seemed productive. Regarding documentation in the IEP, according to Ms. Alvarez's report, All 6 parts of this section unanimously were considered proficient, including section where directions regarding listing supportive telecommunication necessities within an IEP were regularly complied with. Programs for backing up supportive telecommunication were mentioned within the IEP. Supportive telecommunication was connected with benchmarks and performance within regular courses. The applications were explained within reachable periods. And that supportive telecommunication materials mentioned within the IEP featured direct explanations regarding materials and programs. Regarding AT implementation, Ms. Alvarez mentioned that 5 of the 7 parts were seen as proficient, including that the phasing in of support in telecommunication was being influenced through joint efforts. Supportive telecommunication were applied among regularly scheduled plans. The pupils were presented with chances for applying differing approaches. Instructional chances among campus personnel, legal guardians, the pupil getting furnished. And that the phasing in supportive telecommunication was influenced by testing information and amendable depending on the results and efforts. Ms. Alvarez added that 2 parts mentioned challenges. The challenges were that team members among the educational atmosphere there was challenges within the team members among the educational atmosphere accounting for duties regarding the phasing in of supportive telecommunication, even though phasing in among language. Phasing in of supportive telecommunication features inspection of and accounting for materials, and the thing lacking was a firm template regarding accounting for application materials, causing digital struggles. The evaluation of the effectiveness. According to Ms. Alvarez, every part of the section was considered proficient, including assessing over the duties regarding information requiring acquisition and appraisal being directly explained. Information acquired focusing on certain targets was reached by the pupil and tied with IEP benchmarks. Appraisals regarding productivity were featured as numerical and subjective computations. Productivity was measured among the atmospheres while routine events occur during the day. The information that was gathered for recognizing enhancements and hindrances that decide application of supportive technology. And if amendments were getting made, if warranted, depending on assessment information. And that continuous re-examination and assessment regarding productivity support and supportive technology had occurred. Regarding administrative support, this is part 1. According to Ms. Alvarez, this is the only section where a majority of the parts had more of a challenge than were proficient, including that Ms. Alvarez's education jurisdiction possessed drafted advisories, although there's a struggle phasing them in, causing challenges with availability. The guidelines on using supportive telecommunication struggle with their messaging, generating struggles on the way materials need to be phased in. Supportive telecommunication duties were lacking being listed within duty explanations, and they were lacking a supportive telecommunication expert on campus, which hindered the ability for assisting programs, especially within the secondary level. Also, supportive telecommunication was lacking at times within campus electronic organizing and fiscal appropriations, restricting availability for materials. And the last thing where there was a challenge was that regarding a template across the jurisdiction for assessing every part of the supportive telecommunication template, causing challenges with assistance and phasing in. Part 2 of the administrative support section. There's only one part of the section considered proficient, in that regard instructional guidance getting furnished among campus personnel and the legal guardians of pupils, although frequent chances may enhance extensive productivity with supportive telecommunication. Regarding professional development, according to Ms. Alvarez, 3 parts of the section were proficient, such as mentioned that thorough career progression and instructional opportunities for recognizing the job of supportive telecommunications for meeting IEP benchmarks. Also, there were frequent another proficiency was regarding frequent instructional offers furnished by municipal, regional, or federal means. And the last proficiency was that it discussed occupational training complying with study influence templates regarding continuing instruction. Ms. Alvarez also mentioned that 4 parts of this section noted challenges. Her educational jurisdiction is missing an organized occupational growth template which prioritizes certain groups and results connected alongside supportive telecommunication. Another challenge is that career enhancement taught initial perspectives, although it was missing focuses for secondary pupils' supportive telecommunication necessities, especially when regarding SLD, Specific Learning Disabilities. Next thing was that occupational growth getting furnished lacked connections with regional and federal guidelines, which hindered effectiveness, and that quintessential assessment templates for evaluating effects regarding occupational growth for instruction and results for pupils connected with supportive telecommunications. The advice recommended by Ms. Alvarez for other teachers navigating the AT process. Ms. Alvarez's first recommendation was that educators must begin through applying organized fact-gathering templates commencing when test runs start, and also design grading scales and benchmark sheets for observing numeric and subjective information. Ms. Alvarez advised that the pupil and their legal guardians partake within the steps of using supportive telecommunications and presenting comments about it, and having the legal guardians attend courses about applying materials off campus, because furnishing opportunities ensures that devices are correctly phased in throughout instructional atmospheres.